Steam locomotives are really cool. We just have to admit that as a fact. They weren't built to be cool, they had to fundamentally fulfill a purpose first, but that hasn't stopped some of them from being favoured more than others. Previously, I made a video discussing a type of steam locomotive that I dislike. So let's turn things around, spread some positivity today by outlining some that are my personal favourites. I'm meant to be wearing my badge. I need my Terrier 150 badge because it's Stepney's 150th birth year. Yes. Ignore that little continuity error. Back to where we were. Usually in a top 10 video, you would expect to start at number 10 and work your way down to number 1, but we're going to do things a bit differently today. If you're subscribed to this channel, as well you should be, you might be expecting the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway Terrier class to be top of the list. Well, let me surprise you all by saying that it's not even on the list. That's because it absolutely is my favourite. That's way too predictable, so I suppose we're just going to reveal number 1 now and say yes, the Terrier class. Absolutely, pinnacle, brilliant design. Good job, William Stroudley, you happy umbrella man. They're off in a tier all on their own. Let's call it their S tier. Stepney tier. There we go. End of the video. We've seen the top 1 now. So I guess this becomes a top 11 list, as we're going to look at the 10 other engines that follow the Terriers in my personal favourites. I'll also be breaking up the video by going through some of the criteria as to why I've chosen these. And I'd also love to know what your favourite steam engines are in the comments below. I'm sure there'll be a lot of varying opinions, and it'll be good to see if some of yours are also on my list. Let's go. Number 10. The Great Western Railway Castle Class. Starting proceedings with what I consider is the magnum opus of the GWR. There are bigger engines that came after this, and there are more elegant designs that came before, but for many years the 4073 class was the top of the food chain for the Western region. They were the most powerful, and the fastest, setting records in the heyday of railway travel. Through exchange trials and jealous note copying, they would inspire engineers from other companies to make locos just like them, famously outperforming Gresley's A1 Pacifics. The fact that 171 were built shows why Charles Collett decided to improve upon existing designs for Top Link Express locomotives, instead of conjuring up something completely new. Read your history books, learn from what came before. These engines look mighty and powerful, decked out of course with Swindon's finest brass trimmings. Most of all though, what's caught my attention whenever I've seen a video of them is the noise.
Yeah, that was powerful, wasn't it?
So a brief note on why these made the cut. Firstly, what do I mean by a favourite? Does that mean a like on this video? Well, yes, of course, but also different people will have different preferences for different reasons. You could take into account the special history and legacy of a locomotive, or factor in the performance statistics on paper of what a design is capable of. An engine might have a more sentimental connection, like a train that ran through your hometown. Or you might have formed an opinion having worked on board a specific example. Well, though I do volunteer with steam locos, and can appreciate that the experience from the cab or the workshop floor might differ my opinion, I can't say that I've worked on most of the engines on this list, so for me it can't be judged purely from a cruise perspective.
Let's face it, as artificial as it may be, most of our opinions of these machines are based purely on how they look and sound. Trains tap heavily into the senses, and I'm sure most of the time a favourite is chosen based on the appearance alone. Things like what sound the whistle makes, or what colour the paint is, regardless of how well the machine does at its intended duty. With all that in mind, number 9, the London, Tilbury and Southend Railway Class 79. Here is the perfect example of an engine I like because it looks pretty, and I like the way it moves. How shallow of me, I know. Many of you may not have even heard of this class, but of the 39 built, one is actually preserved, called Thundersley. These mighty tank engines were built from 1909 to work the suburban lines between London and Essex, resplendent in an LSWR looking green, and proudly carrying a board with their destination on the front. They were designed by Thomas Whiteleg, an engineer you've probably also never heard of, and his design was known to derail, leading to them carrying lifting jacks on the front to remedy this. This engine reminds me heavily of Belfast and County Down Railway number 30 over in Northern Ireland, which may as well share its place on the list. 442 tank engines aren't too common, so when you get one like this that looks so powerful in every photo, it's difficult not to like. Having said that, Thundersley has not been in steam since the early 70s, so it's difficult to base an opinion on an engine that you've never seen move. Number 8. The London, Midland and Scottish Railway Princess Royals. Back to the big engines, and these ones are about as giant as you'll get. Well, on a British mainline that is. The LMS had convinced themselves for so long that they could make do with their express trains being double-headed by two smaller engines. So, when William Stanier introduced these titans, they must have made the firemen faint. In every paint scheme they wore, the Princess Royals lived up to their name, and really encapsulate for me the golden age of railway travel. Shout out to the Duchesses as well, which improved upon them and look just as jaw-dropping. But for the sheer scale of them alone, the Princess Royals might just take the crown. Now, sadly, none of the engines on this list are actually from outside the United Kingdom, again purely because it's those machines that I'm personally most familiar with. If you'd like me to talk about some of my favourite engines from around the world, do let me know. I am always happy to talk about trains. Number 7. The London and South Western Railway O2. This is the O2 Dome, and this is the dome of an O2. These engines basically phased out the use of Terriers on the Isle of Wight, but I can't even hate them for it because they are wonderful bits of kit in their own right. William Adams created many memorable locomotives that have become fan favourites, and Calbourne specifically is one of mine. Not only is the story of her survival both tragic and amusing, but the capabilities of these nippy little engines is pretty admirable. One of my dream model layouts would be to have a garden railway with a malachite green train happily meandering behind an O2. Both with the original bunker and the Isle of Wight extension, Calbourne is a very smart locomotive. Even complete with that characteristic breathing sound from the air pump. You might also have noticed that all of these examples on the list have at least one representative still around today. I think we are incredibly fortunate to have so many different types of railway traction preserved, and I found it difficult to choose any favourites from engines that no longer exist. Again, should this video do well, maybe we'll look at some engines that I think were a crying shame to have not been rescued. Number 6. The South Eastern and Chatham Railway 01. Not to be confused with the 02, as they are not related in the slightest, but number 65 is another lucky survivor. James Stirling's O-Class started out looking very different, and once rebuilt, it has meant that many people now confuse this for the C-Class, that's also at the Bluebell Railway. Both are the most well-dressed goods engines that you'll ever see, quintessentially Victorian in every way, which has made them very popular in film productions. Number 65 is an engine that I've actually worked with, so perhaps it's personal sentiments that's put it this high on the list. After a scare from the taxman, this engine was actually broken down into its components and scattered throughout the country to prevent it from being scrapped. Right around the time that I was born, it was reassembled against all odds, and has been an asset to the railway ever since. Silly personal ties aside, the hours spent painting those fine lines, and the brasso needed to keep everything polished, is worth crediting. They even look good in blue. Now there's an idea. Speaking of engines I've experienced from the cab, you might be wondering where all the narrow gauge numbers are. I think other gauges are in a category of their own, and too many would appear on this list to even make it fair. So, you get the idea by now. Perhaps that's for another video. Subscribe. Number 5. The Great Western Railway Hall Class. From classy to pretty standard, but still pretty. At number 5 we have the Do-It-All Mixed Traffic Engine. If you don't know much about railway history, you might be thinking that we've already seen this one. But there is something about the halls that just feels right. There's something pleasing about an engine that can take a slow goods train or handle prestigious expresses and still look right at home. In particular, I really like the Hawksworth modified halls, with the flat-sided tenders and the more robust profile. If you want a job done, you could trust a hall to do it, and I respect them for that. Also, two tones, my lords. Number 4. The London and North Eastern Railway B1 class. Same as the above, but now to stop the Eastern region fans from sweating that none of their beloved engines are on this list. Edward Thompson is a Marmite designer. Depending on who you ask, you either love or hate what he did. But right in the middle is the mixed traffic bongos. To be honest, really it's Mayflower that's made them top 5 on this list, as she hauled what has been my first and only mainline rail tour to date, making one hell of a noise whilst doing so. Smaller engines working hard are sometimes more impressive than a big engine having no trouble whatsoever. So, a middle ground engine like a Class 5 going at full pelt is a sight and sound to behold. Heading into the top 3 now, and we have somehow covered all of the big 4 pre-nationalisation companies, but nothing from British Railways yet. Another way of defining a favourite could be the desert island question. If you could own one engine, or have to work with just one for the rest of your life, then what would you choose? On that theme, number 3. The London, Midland and Scottish Railway IVOT 2MT. Plus the BR Standard 2MT, they're basically the same. As I've recently got back from Disney World, where you have to scan your fingerprint for some reason, I'm legally bound to say that I love a Mickey Mouse tank engine. The 2MTs are perfect in my opinion. Big enough to manage a decent train, but small enough to have to work for it. User-friendly is a good way to describe them, like the 3 and 4MT tanks also designed by Robert Riddles. Standard parts, good access, clear visibility in both directions, and smooth riding. If you were buying a car, but it was actually a steam engine, a 2MT would be an economical way to go. They do get a bit dull, always being seen in every variety of black paint. So, thanks to the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway for making 41241 stand out in crimson red, because it really proves that they can wear it with style. Number 2. The Southern Railway U-Class. If it's not clear to tell, I'm from the south of England, so inevitably there's a lot of southern region representation here. Richard Mansell is another designer's works that I've become fond of, both in Ireland and in the UK. The U-Class had a troubled start in life as the problematic River class, which kept ending up in the river. Rebuilt as tender engines, beefy is a good way to describe them. Inspired by the earlier SECR with the N class. Aside from the obvious answer being a Terrier, if I owned an engine privately in the same manner as W.G. Smith owned 1247, or Alan Pegler owned Flying Scotsman, then I'd probably want something like a U-boat. An engine that would fit in on most heritage railways, but is just big enough to show a wheel on the main line as well. Operationally, you're not stuck with the narrow firebox that you'll find on an S15 or a Schools class, but you would have to put up with a bit of rain every now and then. On appearances alone, the extinct LB and SCR K-Class is a very balanced looking engine. The U-boats feel like a later evolution of those, that improves upon them in every way. Like the K-Class tank engines that preceded them, not to be confused with each other, the U's do have a tendency to knock about a bit on the curves. But that's all part of the fun, isn't it? Before we get to number 1, or number 2 if you're counting the Terrier as Terrier 55 Stepney's obvious favourite, we all know that now's the time for some honourable mentions. The engines that get no condolence prize, apart from a pat on the back to make them feel valued. The GWR 1400s. Everyone loves these. It's Oliver. It's the engine from the Titfield Thunderbolt. It's the Tivy bumper. Something different from the GWR in the era when they were built. And surprisingly, agile tank engines for their size. Both powerful and pretty quick. I adore these auto tanks, but the problem for me is that they are a bit narrowly focused on always pulling auto trains. Rightly so, of course. This is what they were built to do, and it's a rather unique display. But especially in preservation, I feel like we barely get to see any of these engines hauling something other than an auto coach. Nothing wrong with that, but it is limiting, especially when choosing a favourite. The LB and SCR E4s. I can't pinpoint whether I like these because of Birch Grove, or because it's so nearly Thomas. They weren't the most successful class, but neither were most of Robert Billington's engines. I think a lot of the time, people forget that this is actually what they looked like before they were rebuilt. And I have to say, I don't like these half as much as how Birch Grove looks today. I've got fond memories of this engine as I was growing up, so hopefully one day number 473 will steam again. Sing us a song, you're the piano tank. The London and South Western Railway T3. An engine that has only recently gained stardom, having come back to life after 70 sleeping years. Adam's back at it again, with a gorgeous bit of craftsmanship. Number 563 is a gem. And I don't really have a reason why it's not on the list, apart from I could only choose 10. Lion. We want the Titfield Thunderbolt. Out of the museum? Well, yes, but Railway 200 has come and gone, and she ain't going anywhere. Even though it's probably not the original Lion, this is a classic choice for many. But an engine that has spent so many years on static display was never likely to make it to the top 10. Yeah, a bit ironic I suppose. Dunrobin 2. On the other hand, here's a very unique locomotive with a fascinating history and a well-travelled career. Dunrobin's design profile is lovely. It's such a fun little engine, and I'm thrilled that Beamish and Severn Valley are working to restore her to running order once again. However, I can't put this royal engine on my favourites list because I've yet to actually see it in person. Never meet your heroes and all that. I might be disappointed, you never know. And finally, number 1. My all-time favourite type of steam engine that isn't the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway William Stroudley A-Class 060 tank engine of 1872. The South Eastern and Chatham Railway P-Class. Oh come on, surely you'd all predicted that. It's basically a later version of the Terrier, of course it's my favourite. In many ways, I'd argue that they're better than the Terriers, but they have their downfalls in other aspects. For the same reasons, these brightly coloured, tiny tank engines are utterly brilliant. They do look exactly like you'd picture a typical tank engine, basically straight out of a Thomas episode. They are very well proportioned, and one of those locos that looks suited to whatever rolling stock it's carrying, both going forward and in reverse. One of my favourite combinations ever was when 323 Bluebell and 178 Nettle used to double head trains back to back, or top and tail with another small engine. It is no wonder why the Acura scale, rest in peace Hattons, 00 gauge model of them always sells out. They are very adaptable to different layouts, and by extension to different real railways. It is amazing that, unlike the 50 Terriers built, or the thousands of pannier tanks constructed for the Great Western, only 8 of the P-Class were ever made. It's even more remarkable that of those, 4 of them still survive. It's a bleak time whenever there's not one of them in active service, but practically, having such small fuel capacity means they can't always do all that much. To solidify their place at the top of this list, I can say that I've been on as third man, with both Bluebell and Nettle, and despite not much room in the cab, from loco crews I've spoken to, they are every bit as delightful to fire as they are to admire. There were occasions when one of them would happily shift 6 Mark I coaches all on their own. Also, having a Britannia Chime and Stania Hooter fitted, 323 and 178 both turned heads as they stormed up the line. I'm absolutely looking forward to seeing 753 at the Kenton East Sussex and Primrose at the Bluebell, returning to steam once more one day. But that's enough idolising nicely painted pieces of metal. To summarise, I like them for every reason that I like the Terrier tanks. The Ps are perfect. That is all a preference though, and others may disagree, but overall it doesn't really matter. There is no right or wrong answer to which is the best. All of these locomotives were built to operate trains first, and look smart afterwards. Except perhaps Dunrobin, ever the outlier.
So, what are your opinions on my opinions of the engines on this list? Fire away in the comments. Let's start a sprawl as to which piece of outdated motive power is the most superior. If you've enjoyed this video, did you know that you could pay me to enjoy more videos? Yes, that's right. If you find the description of this video, you'll also find a link to my Patreon, where you can support future content on the channel and get a load of exclusive rewards as a thanks. For instance, I'm about to read out a list of names of people who have helped to make this video possible. So, without further ado,
This video was thanks to the following channel patrons: Alex Goodman, GBH Train, D0280 Falcon, Sean Tempest, Random Thomas Fan, Dark White 73, Andrew Dyack, Reese Lee Walter, Ryan RTS, Ewan Pentland, Steam Power 4472, Jude 72, Firewind 10, Luneacres Photography, Mario Sonic 64, Elias, TJOC 9891, Tamsy, Insane Edward, SB Track Tales, and Eisenstag 04.